Good evening and welcome to the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education regular meeting for Wednesday, September 9th, 2020. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Would you please call the roll?
Peschel.
Here.
Szilagyi.
Here.
Harlan.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Garner.
Here.
Herzog.
Here.
Olmsted.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We have two special guests with us this evening from the Shapiro STEM Academy, Olivia and Braxton Hutchinson, who have come out with their parents on this cool September night to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So Braxton and Olivia. You can come right up around the table there if you want to.
There you go, bud.
Okay, great. Good job.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thing with a little bow, another.
Schools are all about the students, and so it's always important to us to have students at our meetings to remind us why we're here. So we're especially happy to have you here tonight as our first students leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So thank you very much, Braxton. We really appreciate you coming out tonight, and also you, Olivia. Thank you for joining your brother and helping us with the pledge tonight. Thank you very much.
Yay. Thanks, guys.
I forgot to mention that Braxton and Olivia represent the Shapiro STEM Academy, and we're really happy to have them here. Thank you. And thanks, Mom and Dad, for coming out. At this time, we move on to the public hearing on the proposed budget for the 2020-2021 school year. I would like to call this budget meeting to order and read the notice of the budget hearing. Notice is hereby given to the qualified electors of the Oshkosh Area School District that the budget hearing will be held in the boardroom of the Oshkosh Area School District Administration Building located at 215 South Eagle Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, on Wednesday, September 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m. The summary of the budget is printed below. Detailed copies of the budget are available for inspection in the district's administration office at 215 South Eagle Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or by calling Drew Nehans, Executive Director of Business Services, at 920-424-0122. Next on the agenda is the presentation of the 2020-2021 budget, and Drew Nehans, our Executive Director of Business Services, will lead us in that effort. Mr. Nehans?
Good evening. We're going to go through the budget hearing. So there's 4 steps in doing a budget adoption. The step 1 is creating the budget. Step 2 is publishing it for the taxpayers. Step 3 is what we're in right now, holding a public hearing. And then step 4 is the school board adopts the budget, and then we'll set a tax levy. So the way we do the budget in Wisconsin, we've got multiple funds. We do a fund accounting in the state of Wisconsin. So we use what's called WFAR, the Wisconsin Uniform Financial Accounting Requirements. And that is what guides us within our fund accounting in the budgeting process. It also does comply with the GAAP, which is generally accepted accounting principles. So when our auditors come in and do their audits, they not only reconcile our accounts for DPI within the WFAR system, but also for the GAAP. So the funds that we use, and this isn't an all-inclusive list, this is a highlight of the most common funds that are used within the schools. So for us, Fund 10s and Fund 27, these two funds are the operating funds. So Fund 10 is our general fund. The majority of our expenditures and revenues go into Fund 10. Fund 27 is our special education fund. They do get separated out, but they are joined in that revenue. The bulk of the revenue for Fund 27 comes from a transfer from Fund 10. And that's how the government regulates to make sure that we meet our maintenance of effort within special education to make sure what that transfer amount is stays to a certain level so you're not underfunding your special education departments. Fund 21 is a special revenue fund, and typically this has always been where gifts go. Within the last year, due to GASB 84, a lot of school districts are also shifting our student accounts into Fund 21. There's been additional accounting requirements within the school activity accounts that typically wasn't happening when they were in the Fund 60s, which is where a lot of school districts had them. Because of the new accounting requirements, most districts, and we're in the process of transferring ours over to the Fund 21 setup right now. So by the time our next audit comes, our building activity funds will also be in this fund. So the funds 38 and 39, and we do have both of those. These are our debt service funds. Fund 38 is non-referendum debt. For us, Fund 38 is the energy efficiencies. Energy efficiencies are no longer allowed by Wisconsin law. They were removed from being able to be used. Now every district has a Fund 38 that you can tap up to $1 million in outside of referendums. But when you do the energy efficiencies, that also goes into your Fund 38, or at least it used to when you were still allowed to. Fund 39 is your referendum approved. So that's what the majority of ours are when you're looking at your operational or when you're looking at your capital improvement. Those go into the Fund 39. Funds 50 and 80. Fund 50 is our food service, and this is a self-contained fund. So it gets all the revenue and all of the expenditures. It is allowed to have a negative, but you do have to make your Fund 10 transfer, so it balances out at the end, but it always has if you do have a negative balance in there, it stays as a due to Fund 10 until you eliminate that, pay that general fund back. And as long as you have a negative balance in there, you are required by the federal government to do certain reporting requirements that you don't have to do if you completely have surpluses all the time. You have to do what's called a PLE tool to determine what your school lunch prices have to be. As long as you have a completely surplus balance within that, then you're not required to do those. You may still choose to do them, but you're not required. Fund 80 is our community service fund. For Oshkosh, we do have a pretty healthy recreation department, and that's the bulk of what would be put into a Fund 80 fund. So just to kind of go back onto the Fund 50, want to kind of hit on that just to update the board. We did get permission at the end of last school year when COVID first hit and everyone went into lockdown and we were doing virtual school. The federal government gave us permission to do an extension of our summer food program, which means everybody eats free for all the meals. You didn't have to be a designated school to get that. That was stopped at the end of the summer. So going into this school year, we were back to the regular National School Lunch Program. So every meal that was served had to have a corresponding student ID to go with each meal. The communication from the federal government going into this school year was we were not going to get the summer food program back again. They were not going to expand it. We knew what we were getting into as a school district with the environment, with the way the COVID was. We knew what we were getting into, so there wasn't going to be an extension to that summer feed. They changed their mind. As most states start school in the second to third week in August, they were in for a couple weeks, and the federal government opened up the summer food program again. So we applied for it, we're doing it, we're utilizing it. So as of today, no one is being charged for breakfast and lunch throughout our district. We're trying to come up with a efficient way to be able to feed all the kids with a multitude of environments right now going on. We've got some A/B schedule in districts. We've got some buildings that have been going in and out of all virtual. And we're trying to figure out the best way within the food service and the buildings to make sure that all the kids get the meals that they all are not only supposed to, but that are available to them. So we're still working with that, but that's just a new update that has come out that I wanted to make sure the board understood within the Fund 50. So here's a glance at where we generally have broken down within the budget. So roughly 53% of our budget is going to instruction. You can see our fund balance since 2016 was a little bit less than 14 million, and at the end of the 2021 year, with our current budget, it's looking to be a little bit over 20 million. So we have seen some pretty good growth over the last 5 years with our fund balance. And then the lower graph is just a chart of how every year went. So on this graph, we're showing the number of students served, and that is from a third Friday count, FTE. And in a couple slides, we'll kind of go over our per pupil counts, because there's many different counts, and they're all a little bit different and confusing. So this one is based on a third Friday count in September, FTEs, and then our total operating budget, which is funds 10 and 27. And then off of that amount, that's our expenditure per pupil. And then you can see on the bottom, the state is responsible for 52% of our revenues. The local taxes or local contributions are about 30%. And the federal government or other sources make up that final 18%. So FTEs. FTEs, the reason I'm including these in the budget is FTEs kind of base everything around your budget. They're the starting point for everything in Wisconsin. Our revenue caps, our revenue limit is established by a student pupil count. And our general aid, which is the other largest portion of our revenues, is also done on a calculation of our FTEs. So general aid, this is how our pupil counts are calculated. So we start up in the upper right-hand corner in September. So last September's third Friday count, we had 9,668 students for an FTE. We add in the 2 Challenge Academy kids, so we get 9,670. And then from there, they add in the previous January 2nd pupil count. So you can see we had just over 19,000 students. We divide that by 2. That gives us our average membership count. That average membership count gets added, we add to that our summer school enrollment for last year, which was 167. Our student choice, parental choice kids, which is 299, and then the 2 special needs scholarship kids. So that brings us to a total for aid purposes of enrollment of 10,125. So to confuse things, that just gets us what the state is going to pay us in part of the calculation, and that all ends up going into a much more complicated formula of our expenditures that get taken in with the pupil counts. So then our revenue limit, which sets our budget, is based on our third Friday count, which is the September count. And remember, in this count, our 3-year-olds are only 0.5 FTEs, and our 4-year-olds are only 0.6 of an FTE. And then we add to that the summer count from what we did on the aid, the 167, but in the revenue formula, we only get 40% of that. So we get 67 kids to add into our September count. So for revenue limit purposes, we have 9,735 students for the 1920 year, because we obviously haven't done that for this year yet, because our third Friday count is next Friday. So then to get our final revenue limit number, we take a 3-year rolling average of the previous 2 years done exactly like this, and that 3-year rolling average ends up giving us what our per pupil count is. This year we get to multiply that by $10,000, and that's our base revenue that we build our budgets off of. So this year, the additional revenues we got from above what 19 and 20 were. So we get an extra $179 a pupil, pending that you approve that we go up to that amount as a board. We also get to see an additional $121 per pupil increase in our low spending ceiling. So that'll get us up to the 10,000 per pupil minimum, which was set by the state in the last budget. There is no increase in per pupil aid from the state right now, but our state aid was projected to increase just over $3.7 million in total aid. So total revenues, we're looking at just under $3.6 million increase from 1920, which is a little bit under 2.5%. Our expenditures. We got movement that the board approved for salary and schedule advancement for the groups, and a 7% increase in our health insurance. And then we have increases within our normal expenditure budgets. Overall expenditures right now are going up by just over $3 million, which is just over 2%. So you can see we're still showing a projected surplus right now. So I know some of these numbers get a little small and harder to see. This is just a breakdown. The right side of the chart is a breakdown of the projected budget for every fund. So you can see where the general fund sits. We're looking 3/4 of the way down, you'll see the surplus deficit. General fund, we're looking at just under $1 million surplus. Fund 21 and Fund 27, you're not allowed to carry balances. A typical deficit within the debt funds, which is normal because you're paying 3 payments out of each budget instead of just the two. And then we are showing a deficit of $300,000 in our Fund 80. We have some work that is needed to be done that is gonna cause that potentially to go into a little bit. But they do have a little bit more than $500,000 fund balance that we're gonna tap into. So then we've got some historical revenue and expenses to see how now the previous numbers prior to the far right column, those are all actuals that have been audited. So these aren't budget to budget numbers. These are the budget, upcoming budget compared to actuals from prior budgets. So you can see how our revenues we're a little bit slower to grow. In the last couple of years, they've grown quite a bit more. Expenditures have followed suit. Again, that's because we got increases in revenue limit over the last couple of years that have been pretty stagnant for the previous 7 to 10 years. So that's the increases within the revenue limit and the low revenue ceiling have kind of spurred some growth within budgets. And then the fund balance is down on the bottom on what that projection is. The next couple charts are just a little bit more detail within the revenues themselves. This one's sorted by the source themselves, so you get a little bit more detailed look. Again, one thing to kind of look in this is how the state source revenues are continuing to increase, which is a good thing. The more you can get from the state pool, the less you rely on funding from your taxpayers. And then we are also seeing an increase in growth within the federal resources as well. Quite a lot of that is due to we've been very aggressive in the last 2 years on Medicaid reimbursements, and that's been ballooning like crazy here in the district, which is a really good thing. As long as we can keep our maintenance of effort within Fund 27, that just helps us reduce the amount of money we have to transfer from Fund 10 at the end of the year. So that's always a good thing. One of the things I wanted to do and kind of explain and work through with the board on the revenue, the second line here on the state, the per pupil categorical aid. Right now, we're budgeting for that to basically stay flat from last year to this year. In the state budget, it's predicted to stay flat based on your enrollment numbers. But there is a real concern out there right now that this is going to be the one tool that the legislators have to reduce school funding prior to the next biennium if they want to help balance the shortfalls at the state level. This is going to be the one tool they have to reduce school funding because all the other ones are kind of set locally. This is the one that's set within the state that the timing doesn't affect them. The categorical aid, the regular general aid gets set October 15th. We're not expecting decreases there. This would be the one. So we'll keep an eye on this because we think if there's an adjustment, it's going to be pretty late in the year to possibly January of next year. But again, we do have padding within our current budget that even if this number did get reduced by what we're being quietly told it may, we still will be able to absorb it and still have a small surplus. It's just something that could potentially happen down the road.
If I may, just a clarification also for the board to remember related to the surplus. That is also the area for which we would be looking at a potential CPI increase for our staff. So if the state were to make those type of cuts, unfortunately, that's what ultimately is going to be at stake.
So this chart just kind of breaks down where we are in a nice, easy, I know some people really like the visual, the bar chart visual. Just kind of really shows you where the breakdowns are and how equalization aid coming from the state is kind of driving a lot of our budget. And to me, in my position, this is a good thing. The more we can get from the state, the more we can capture from the state, the better off the local taxpayers are. There are definitely districts where this is flipped the other way, and the majority of their funding's coming from the local taxpayers and not from the state. This is just another example of that, just in a pie chart. So now we'll get to the expenditures. Since the revenues kind of drive everything, then the expenditures fill in where all the revenue gets us to. So we've got a breakdown here of the salaries and benefits, which is the bulk of budgets. You can see that between Fund 10 and Fund 27, our salaries and benefits increased roughly 3% from actual from last year. It'd be a much smaller percentage if we looked at budget to budget, but we looked at budget to actual. So it's about 3%. And then you can see the rest of our expenditures are budgeted increases of just about 2% increase from the prior year. And then here's just another breakdown in pie form of where our funds 10 and 27 expenditures go to. This chart is a summary by function. So you can break that down and see where our differences are. Again, some of the increases in the 160s, co-curricular activities. We've got some potential work that will be, we're looking at that is going to account for why the budgeting increase there is happening. But that's a large increase, so I wanted to make the board obviously aware of what was coming up in that. So that gets us to fund balance projections. So our fund balance for a district our size has typically been low comparatively to other districts. I know that's nothing new to the board. I'm sure you've heard that before. One of the things in our ratings call when we refinanced our debt with Moody's, this was one of the bigger concerns of the rating gentleman that I spoke with. And he's good with it now, but the concern that Michelle from PMA and I have is if we take on more debt the referendum passes and we now take on another $107 million in debt, that's going to affect how our rating looks. And one of the bigger contributors of that is going to be our fund balance situation. So the board understands what the fund balance discussion is that we have with the ratings agent. So it's kind of a three-pronged approach is the way Michelle and I took it. Fund 73, our OPEB liability, Fund 46, which is for our capital improvements, both have to come from Fund 10. And then our general fund balance, we've been packaging together as a package, because if we weren't building up Fund 73 and Fund 46 to the levels we are, we could have been putting that into Fund 10. We've been choosing to put them into Fund 73 and Fund 46 for a variety of reasons, but we're choosing to do that internally, and you as a board choose to do that when you approve those transactions. So we're packaging the fund balance not just as our roughly $20 million fund balance, we're packaging it also as we've got a little bit more than $4.5 million in Fund 46, and we have a fairly significant surplus balance in Fund 73 as well, waiting to help us with the deferred benefit on that side. So we're doing it as a package, but ideally what the rating agent wants to see is a minimum of 20%. So we're looking at about a $30 million budget, or $30 million balance, if you look at our current expenditures. So that's just something that's going to be coming up again with the board, especially as we get to the end of the fiscal years, and we try to weigh a decision of where do we want it, when we have surpluses, where do we want it to go? Having very strategic discussions on, there's a reason it doesn't just go into Fund 10, just like this last year we put $2.5 million into Fund 46. Well, a lot of that was driven because we collected over $300,000 in additional aid by doing that with those expenditures. So we need to be very strategic when we talk about fund balance. I just don't want the community, the board, to think fund balance is our cash balance in the bank, like a savings account. It isn't. This isn't our cash balance. This is what our leftover, our fund balances are, but it doesn't have cash involved. So these are the prior 5 years and how we've ended the school year as far as with our fund balance. And again, with our fund balance position, some of these were very warranted to try to get into the fund balance. So that gets us all down to what's the tax levy going to project to be. And again, these are projections at this point. The state won't certify our numbers until October 15th. So we've got a third Friday count next week that's going to start determining what our pupil aid is, or our pupil count is, which is going to go a long way to setting what our revenue limit is. Based on our current numbers, we would be looking at a overall mill rate of 8.94. Again, there's a lot of moving parts on this, so that I can guarantee you it is going to change from there. How much it's going to change, I can't tell you right now, but it is going to change. It will not stay that amount. But everything other than the Fund 10 should be pretty set. The other ones won't change at all. And then this is just a breakdown of what our tax levy means per pupil over the years. And again, you can see the spike in the last 2 years with the increase in the revenue limit. So the next steps, we're obviously going to probably keep talking about this at most of the next board meetings, giving updates as the third Friday count comes in. We'll provide an update to the board on that. There's an October 1st certification and then the October 15th final certification. So we'll update the board every time we get an update as well. We'll continue to refine the budget. estimates on that at the end of October. The school board will vote on these and actually truly set the tax levy. And then potentially in November, we'll vote and do all the budget changes, because there will be budget changes that are going to happen then as well.
Questions, comments?
That was awesome.
Mr. Nehans, I really want to compliment you publicly on the quality of your report tonight. This was a very thorough presentation, and I really appreciated the graphs as well as the numbers. And I know that the board likes to see data, and you've certainly done an excellent job of providing us with that tonight. So I thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Agreed. Thank you. Yeah, very good.
Anyone else, comment or question? Mr. Peschel?
Sure. It's just more of an inquiry of sorts. So I don't know what slide it is, but it's the summary of expenditures by function.
Okay.
You were talking about the budgeted expenditures in regards to curriculum. There's a couple line items in there where there is money budgeted from the general fund, but there's no specification of what that line item is. So the 13000 and 150000.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. Mrs. Schnorr didn't utilize the same company to get a lot of these graphs and a lot of the data out.
Okay.
She didn't utilize the resources we have the way I do. And so it's kind of a new thing for them. I had to get them backdated to kind of get some of these information for you, and this one got missed. The 130,000s is vocational education,
Okay.
and the 150,000s, that's all the special education.
Right.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I had those in my notes and I completely skipped those within the
Good
conversation.
So, thank you for that. Hold on, I had another question here. I guess I just want to talk about the fund balance a little bit, just because I operate in a couple different worlds,
Okay.
public worlds, and so when we talk about fund balance in one of those worlds, they talk about having enough fund balance to continue operations of the entity for a certain amount of time, plus another percentage. So, and from listening to you, it didn't sound like that's the mindset for the fund balance that we have.
Some of it is.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, again, it depends on who you talk to, on where their philosophy is. And to me personally, I don't think it's realistic for a district our size to carry the kind of fund balance to start getting into what you were describing,
Yep.
where we can maintain operations for a certain amount of time. I think that's going to be a really hard sell to the public to say we need $70 million just
Sure.
in balance
Correct.
to be able to not short-term borrow and make things, so we aren't doing any of that. I think the larger you get within your budgeting, the larger that number has to grow to, where
Okay.
we're so limited, and it's not like I can invest it in even like semi-conservative funds where I can grow a fairly decent market rate. It's going to be very limited to basically a CD kind of a structure getting no interest whatsoever.
Okay.
So I don't really, for a district our size, I'm not a huge proponent of a large fund balance. But again, that being said, when it comes to our rating and what that could do from a AA minus to the next rating, how much money that could cost us in an interest rate, that's to me when the fund balance is really the dialogue. And that's really the only context that I really view the fund balance being relevant for us. We're not going to carry enough of a fund balance to not short-term borrow.
Right.
I just don't see that happening. Even if we get up to that $30 million mark, realistically, the way we get our state aid, unless that changes and we start getting that more quarterly, like there's been discussion about that, but until that actually happens, we're still going to have a dead period for 7 months that we don't really get revenue. So it's not realistic to think our cash flow is going to be to the point where we're not going to really short-term borrow. Now, we are working in the business office at doing some things differently to minimize what our short-term borrowing is. We are being much more aggressive now at starting to put grant claims in. We know we can put Title I, Title II grant claims in, flow-through claims that are a little bit larger dollar amounts. We're working on getting those claims in closer to the end of October so we can start seeing a chunk of change in November to help us minimize the short-term borrowing. But the dollar amounts that are going to be needed to eliminate it, it's going to be more than we probably want, just in a balance. So that's kind of the approach I'm taking, is more of a, let's take the 5-6 year plan of, we don't necessarily need to have 30 million just in fund balance sitting there, but if we can throw 30 million within the fund balance, the Fund 46 and the Fund 73, now we have a dialogue with the rating agent and say, here's the explanation why. Because when I had that discussion with him this time on, we're only adding 400,000 to our fund balance, and I know our fund balance is low, but I put 2.5 million over here in Fund 46, and this is how much aid it got me extra. He was agreeing with me and going, yeah, very good. Okay. Yep, I agreed, no problem. We'll not worry about the fund balance percentage anymore. It's just having that conversation, but also one of the things we need to look into, or I need to look into to help advise the board on, is do we have to put that within our fund balance policy? That we're going to combine the three funds within, this is our fund balance policy, and not that it's necessarily a percentage within Fund 10, but overall, here are the three funds that we're looking at overall to do this, to help kind of narrow it down even further for the rating agency, so they can see it's truly in our policy, not just me as the business manager saying, this is my philosophy. Now it could be the board, truly the board philosophy. So I've got a little more work to do on the back end of seeing what that looks like policy-wise, and if that's even something
I think the
that's
only
doable.
policy we have is
We
just
have-
for fund balance.
Yeah,
and
we
that's
have
it.
just one policy, and
Yep.
it's just for fund balance, and I think we're at like 11 or 12%, and we did that about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep. And,
So, yeah, we'd
and,
have to bring that
and I
back.
saw that. It's just, I want to look a little bit more into,
Good.
can we create a policy
Mm-hmm.
truly that incorporates the three different areas
Mm-hmm.
that we can truly, as a board, then you're taking the policy that this is what is driving our decisions on that.
Right.
I have a little work on my end
Okay.
to do on that before. But
Excellent.
that's kind of where I'm going.
Okay, thank
with
you.
it.
That's excellent.
Dr. Cartwright, did you want to jump in?
No, he addressed it. I was just going to remind the board that we do have a board policy that
Yep.
tells us, it's within a specific range of what our fund balance is supposed to be in percentages. And in addition to that, just an echo of what Mr. Nehans was talking about related to the quarterly payment by the state, because that was one of the recommendations that came out of the Blue
Yeah.
Ribbon Commission.
That'd be nice.
And it was also addressed by the Wisconsin Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly back in January to have the state make more frequent payments, albeit smaller, but they would end up as the same dollar amount in the end. Other questions or comments for Mr. Nehans? Well, again, we thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
look forward to a report again
Another
in
report.
October, maybe a couple of them, as we finalize the budget for 2020, 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this budget hearing meeting.
So moved.
Miss,
Second.
Miss,
Or did I miss
Dr.
something? I'm
Deirdre
sorry.
Herzog, I apologize. I just want to advise the board that there were, no one did sign up for the public comments period for the
Oh.
proposed 2020-2021 budget.
Correct. Thank you. Thank you for keeping me in line. All right. So since there are no public comments, we dispense with the guidelines, so then we can move to adjourn. And I believe we had a motion and a second.
I motioned.
A second.
Kelly? Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Salaji?
Aye.
Harlan?
Aye.
Evans?
Aye.
Garner?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye.
Olmsted?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right. Does anyone need a break at this time? A short recess? Okay, then we'll move right into the regular meeting of the board. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Please call the roll.
Harlan?
Here.
Evans?
Here.
Garner?
Here.
Herzog?
Aye. Here.
Olmsted?
Here.
Peschel?
Here.
Salaji?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We will move on then to board and administrative reports, starting with the board president report. I just want to sincerely thank the district staff, each and every staff member, for their efforts to welcome back all of our students and their colleagues in these unprecedented and challenging times. This opening of school year, I'm sure, was like no other than anyone has ever experienced in the past. And I know the efforts this year may have looked different, probably took more time, and they have not gone unnoticed, and they are greatly appreciated. So thank you to each and every staff member of our district. The last couple of weeks, as Hank and I make our daily walk rounds, usually in the E-Cook vicinity, it's been exciting to see the energy and the effort, especially at that school, and I'm sure it's representative of all the other schools in the district. But last week, to see the smiles on students carrying their backpacks and hear student voices on the playground and outside was just wonderful. Even Hank got excited over that. Cars parked at the schools, school buses riding around, parents walking with their students to and from schools. We're back, and we're going to make this work. We're in this together. It's just great to see everybody back. I also want to thank the 3 churches that combined to provide school meals through much of the month of August. I know those were also appreciated by our families, and it was good to see the community come together to support all of our students. Last night, I had the opportunity to represent this board at the CESA 6 Board of Control. I just have a few highlights from that meeting. CESA 6 is a cooperative. That's what the C stands for. And so when they make money or bring in more revenues than expenditures, they operate as a cooperative in that they provide monies back to the members, the 39 member districts. So each district has been allocated an amount of money to be used for new services, and that includes Oshkosh. So that'll be something that I'm sure Dr. Cartwright will be working with her staff to determine where those funds may be used. CESA 6 is planning for an in-person legislative breakfast for December as soon as they can work out a location which will accommodate the number of people who typically attend that and who can be placed in spaces so that we do have social distancing going on. It was noted that for the February President's Day in-service, which would be, or staff development, professional development, which would include any of the 39 districts who wish to participate, they are not looking at bringing large numbers of people together, but rather bringing in 2 very high-end national speakers for TED-type talks so that people can tune in from wherever they are. And then finally, I know I've talked with you in the past or shared with you in the past their strategic planning efforts, which reduced their strategic plan to a single page, and I know Dr. Cartwright has worked with her staff to do that as well. They've taken it a little bit farther now at CESA 6, where each division has its own plan on a page, which aligns with the CESA 6 overall plan on a page. And in the future, each employee will have their own plan on a page, looking at results. So everything will be aligned as they look to expand their services for their member districts to better serve their students. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cartwright.
Thank you very much, Dr. Herzog.
You're welcome.
So, last week, as Dr. Herzog was mentioning, we were so thrilled to welcome our students to the 2020-2021 school year, either in person or virtually. Though things feel and look a little different, we are so proud of our students for their cooperation with our new expectations and procedures. We're also very grateful for our amazing teachers who continue to rise to the challenge, finding unique ways to serve and support our students this year. Pictured are a few of our elementary school specialist teachers who are bringing art, music, and so much more to our classrooms. 3 Oshkosh West High School seniors have been named semifinalists in the 2020 National Merit Scholarship. The students are among 16,000 students to receive this recognition nationwide. The students will have the opportunity to continue in the competition, in which more than $30 million in scholarships will be awarded. At this time, I would like to take the opportunity to share a few district updates and important information with our families and community. The following updates are meant to create a shared understanding with our stakeholders. We remain committed to working together to problem solve, and we urge our families to continue to partner with us. We are pleased to announce that all students participating in the district's food service program will receive free school meals through December 31st or until the funding is depleted. Free breakfast and free lunch meals will be provided regardless of free, reduced, or paid meal status, and regardless of which school they attend. This offering is made possible through the USDA's recently released COVID-19 Child Nutrition Response Waiver. Additionally, students enrolled in the district's K-12 E-Academy, as well as any community member 18 years old and younger, are able to pick up free meals at 2 district sites. We do, however, still encourage our families to complete the free and reduced lunch meal application for this school year. This annual process and application allows us to waive student fees for those in need based on their family's financial situation. The application is available on our food service webpage. Thanks to our partnership with the City of Oshkosh and private funders, we are able to provide all Oshkosh K-12 students with access to free city busing via the Go Transit Oshkosh bus lines. Additional information has been shared with families and is available on our transportation webpage. Our goal is to continue to problem solve to provide our families with solutions that allow for student success. Additionally, with the understanding that this school year is unique, and after listening to student concerns, we are pleased to be making the recommendation later this evening to waive the high school student parking fees for the 2020-2021 school year. So with E-Academy, as all of us know, previously it was offered in our high schools. We were planning to go ahead and expand that to middle school starting this year, but given the COVID environment and the wanting to have the flexibility and ability to give choices to our families, we expanded the E-Academy all the way from kindergarten to grade 12, explaining that some of these commitments were year-long commitments for elementary school, and then for secondary schools, we could revisit the decision at semester. Also explaining that it would require some commitment from the parents as well in order to work with their children, especially our younger children. We also realized that last week on the first day, unfortunately, across the entire state of Wisconsin, so this was not an Oshkosh Area School District issue, this was the entire state, the E-Academy platform had technical difficulties. And it was because everybody was logging onto the system all at the same time. So the load to the system, it overwhelmed it. Oshkosh is one of the larger districts as far as quantity of students who are participating in this platform. We have approximately right now 1,100 E-Academy students, so approximately a little over 11% of the student population. In doing that, we also started listening early last week, paying attention to what was going on, and understanding that we needed to make some changes to how we are delivering E-Academy and what can we do in order to better serve our families. So things that we also recognize is that, with us expanding down to elementary school, it did require 23 teachers that were typically in the classroom in-person teaching being transferred into the E-Academy itself. So these are individuals who we went through the principles and said, okay, who are our tech-savvy people, who are the ones who would be able to be fluid in this environment and who would be able to provide instruction in a virtual environment. And so there was other criteria, of course, but the high level, just to give you a general overview. But it is 23 teachers that this is the first time that they are teaching 100% online. So we recognize that. We also recognize that because we did extend the deadline originally for E-Academy enrollment, that combined with approximately, we had some families that we had to really reach out on because it was a confirmation date, and we had some families that did not secure one way or the other, so we had to do a lot of reach out, as you might say, in order to ensure that who wanted to be in E-Academy was in E-Academy. So we rostered E-Academy in 14 days. So that really kind of pushed us a lot, because we had some new teachers. We had to add some, originally of the 23 new elementary teachers, we also had to, of that number, of the 23, there was some last minute additions because of additional people wanting to register for E-Academy than what had originally on our original window. So this gets into training, as you know, with professional development as well, and making sure that they're ready to go. So again, it's really understanding the whole process and what is occurring, and also understanding what we need to be able to provide to support our teachers in this environment. Going through that, understanding some of these challenges, I would rather say looking at some of these opportunities in order to make adjustments. We are making adjustments to the E-Academy platform itself. One thing I want you to, originally what we want to help people continue to understand for a common understanding, and then I'll get into what are the changes that we're making. One of the things is the synchronous learning. So there's something called asynchronous versus synchronous. Virtual school typically is designed to be asynchronous because it's supposed to be a self-paced, students take it at their own approach. Usually in a virtual environment, that is the underlying purpose of why people choose a virtual environment. Because sometimes they can accelerate. Sometimes they're like, okay, I need to slow down just a little bit. And so they slow down and then they accelerate again. And the goal being that when they need assistance, they reach out to the teacher provides the assistance for the student. If we're seeing that there are students that are struggling, maybe they're not meeting some of the deadlines and it's consistent they're not meeting the deadlines, the teacher doing outreach to check up on the student, also purposely reaching out to the student just even if there's not a reason, just to make sure everything is going okay. What we are doing though, one of the changes we are making, and because we recognize this as being very important, especially at the elementary school level, is we are going to be transitioning into synchronous learning. So this week, for example, we're adding in the morning classroom time, okay? So this is a lot of times where they will get together. They're going to be working with families to try to create that virtual classroom where the students have opportunities to interact with other students from the E-Academy in that morning meeting time, as you might say. From there, we're going to roll that out this week. Next week, now we're going to add a content area and on top of the morning meeting time with synchronous learning, okay? So it may be that next week we start working on language arts, and then we'll let that grow. The following week, we'll take a look, we'll probably add like math to it. And so we will grow this. The goal being is by the end of the month, we'll have all 4 core content areas being taught in a synchronous manner. The beauty of it is, though, we are going to record those lessons, so that way, for the families who are not able to do the synchronous learning, will have access to those recordings for the teachers as they were providing the synchronous lessons in there. The other thing that we recognized was when we were taking a look at the pacing chart. And I believe it's Buzz. It gives you some of the recommended deadlines when you should be doing this much, when you should be doing this much, this much. We recognize, and again, this is one of those, we going back, looking, evaluating what do we need to tweak. We recognize that the pacing chart, especially for like English language arts, was off. We were asking for our families for the first 4 days of school to do about 7 days worth of work. So, and also don't forget, the first day was almost a wash because of the technical problems. And so we are making adjustments to that. Meanwhile, we have already communicated with our parents that, hey, it's okay, you're gonna be okay. Don't stress out if you feel as though you're not hitting this mark right now, because we are gonna be making those adjustments. The other thing that's happening that we're finding that what is occurring is that there are a lot of people that are confused related to this, because it does come from the Florida Virtual School, okay? And so because it's coming from Florida Virtual School, and by the way, Florida Virtual School is used in every state in the nation, so it's not just Florida. When we are looking at this, with this model, what people have to understand related to the standards, the content, what is being taught. It is aligned to the Common Core standards. What Florida did years ago is, rather than calling it the Common Core standards, they earmarked it and said, these are ours, the Florida standards. Very similar to what Wisconsin did. Our curriculum in Wisconsin is primarily based off of Common Core standards. So what it has happened, but Wisconsin branded it as the Wisconsin standards. This is essential for people to understand, because they're thinking they're getting different content and it's all based on Florida stuff. It's based on the Common Core standards, which is what the curriculum is for the most part for here within Wisconsin. And so we just want to make sure people are understanding we're not teaching the Florida standards, we're teaching the Common Core standards. The virtual curriculum was designed, as I mentioned before, from the ground up, mostly to work in that fully virtual school environment, which does require a lot of independent, but in this case, we're revising that in order to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our students and our parents. It is complicated, and we know that this initial pacing is overwhelming, and that, again, we know that modifications are still going to need to be made. But we are hoping that people are seeing that we are listening and we are evaluating, because as I mentioned, we started doing this last week. And from that point in time, we are making slow adjustments. The last thing we want to do is make a knee-jerk adjustment, because it confuses a lot of people. Not only that, we want to make sure that our staff are properly prepared in order to make those adjustments. So that goes into the staff development component of this. So again, we know that with our families, remaining flexible with us, remaining flexible with them, that together we will be able to make this work. And it'll be a very unique Oshkosh Area School District E-Academy family. The last announcement that's important to note that's not up here is that, or two things. One is that at semester, if a parent decides that they want to make a change, then we will even at elementary school, for all three levels, elementary, middle, and high, they will be able to make a change at semester break. The second thing I think that is also very important to recognize is that once we get this completely up and running, in other words, where we have the synchronous learning for all 4 content areas, and our parents are able to engage a lot more, and our students, we are planning to also send out a survey to our parents in order to get more feedback, to make sure, okay, how are we doing? Are you still experiencing some concerns, or are you saying, hey, this is really working well? So, and that is the type of feedback that we're going to be looking for from our parents once we have it up and running. And we are asking parents, I'm hoping for the ones that are maybe watching this, again, just understand, we will get there. We are listening. We are making adjustments. We appreciate your flexibility. We appreciate the understanding that it's going to be okay. It's been, 6 days of school, with one of them being really rough because of the technical issues. But we will get there. And so that is our E-Academy update for everybody. And I'm going to look at Ms. Conrad just to make sure I did not miss anything. Thank you. And I want to publicly say to Ms. Conrad how much I appreciate her leadership in this, because she took this by the horns. Her, along with many other individuals, we'll also have some administrators and oversight, so Lisa Leader and Marcy Gunlock, and just tell them how much we appreciate their work on this, because it has been a lot of work, and we're very thankful for their leadership. Back into presentation in our schools and in our community, and then I have one last announcement after this one as an update. Multiple school sites have been across the entire district, a lot of different places. Very, 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 very proud of our students. I'm very proud of our staff members, the precautions, everything that they're supposed to be doing. And it was so exciting to see parents walking up on that first day of school, with their little one, little kindergartner, and they knew exactly where to go. They knew what dot to stand on a dot, in order to help us with our children understanding the social distancing, those kind of things. Not having problems with people asking, wearing face masks. They're absolutely complying. We're not receiving complaints on that. And our students just getting in there and learning, and very proud of our little ones, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, especially and third grade, because that last year they wouldn't have had this experience, but learning how to use their Chromebooks. Learning how to use their technology has been really fun to watch as well. And then most importantly, because this is the most important thing we need to be doing right now, besides teaching the safety practices, is building those relationships with our children, with our teachers, building relationships with their students. So we're very proud of them. But those are some of the things that you would have seen, I would have seen, I have seen, and you would have seen if you were with me. The only other thing I have as an update, and it's more of a public announcement, a public service announcement, as you might say. So I'd like to know, for all of you in here, how many of you struggle as you're wearing your mask, as the day goes along, it starts stretching out and then starts dropping below your nose? Yes, so I have a solution for you.
Oh, good.
Yes, in fact, if you look in front of you, you have 2 of them.
Oh, I thought they were a mistake.
Yeah, a lot of people did.
And it's okay, because I don't want you to do it right now, because it would require you to take your mask off. So you know how, for those of us who wear our hair up in a ponytail from time to time, or a bun, you know how sometimes you'll go and you get those little plastic ponytail bands? They come in little packages of like 200 or 400 or something to that effect. What's that?
Jim knows all about them.
So what I've done is I bought a box, because candidly, what I also found is, I know some of the masks come with the pre-done ones, but we're finding that, after a few washes, those break. You know, and you're like, oh man, do I have to go buy a new mask now? So a solution that helps with that is if you were to take the end of your mask, you know, where it goes over your ear or something to that, if it's the over the ear kind, scrunch it up, you know, so it almost looks like a ponytail, right? And then take the band like you would normally do in order to tie a ponytail and just loop it around maybe, you know, about 3 times thereabouts. And then you put it on there and guess what, voila, smaller band, which means it's now tightened it up and it's not gonna slip on your nose. And then as the day goes, you can just adjust accordingly. So that's my public service announcement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because I know all of us have been struggling with that a little bit, and just to provide a little bit of assistance for all of
like
our board members.
currently
Want to
COVID
keep you safe for sure.
I just tie them.
So with that, I know we do have 2 district administrative supplemental reports, and I know that y'all usually like to have that, a verbal report out on that. Is that the pleasure of the board tonight?
I believe so.
Okay. Dr. Gunlock?
I think it's good for the public to see and hear what we mean with these reports, and also as a reminder to us who have already looked at the board packet and have received written information on this. So thank you.
Okay, well, good evening. Last board meeting I talked and I said, well, there really wasn't a ton to share because we were so focused on opening school. And as you've heard tonight, you know, we've opened school, things are going well, we're moving forward. But things are also moving forward with the referendum, and the informational meetings are being set up. We do continue to have referendum meetings. We had our last one on September 2nd. Our next one is on the 16th, and that's sort of an internal communications team. We looked at some updates in terms of district reopening efforts. Those obviously have an impact on how and when we proceed with referendum presentations. Obviously, families are very keenly focused on how school's starting, and we want to respect that. We're working on a community newsletter that'll go out that'll start providing more information. Obviously, our website has a wealth of information in terms of the referendum, and that is available for everyone. We've also started creating YouTube videos of the referendum presentation that people are going to be able to view and watch if they're unable to take advantage of some of the other opportunities that I'll tell you about here in just a moment. We've scheduled quite a few presentations, and we've been getting more and more contacts to go out and present to people or do Zoom meeting presentations. So September 8th, which was a couple of days ago, we presented to the administrative team. They knew most of the information in the presentation but had never seen it in its completed form. So we felt it was important to present it to them and give them an opportunity to ask questions, because they're often some of the spokespeople that our parents go to first. We presented, Dr. Cartwright and I presented to the League of Women Voters today. That was a lot of fun. We get to do that every time there's a referendum or an election. We get the opportunity to speak with them. On September 14th, we get an opportunity to have some time with the Neighborhoods Association. I'm particularly excited about that one because they have a lot of questions concerning the impact on the neighborhoods with any of the changes that might be happening. So we're really looking forward to speaking with them and getting their input. And also remember, as we do these referendum presentations, the referendum presentation changes because it becomes reactive to the input and the questions that we receive from the audience. And I think the last referendum in 2016, we were on version 4.6 at the very end, and it had received great input from all the different groups, and we kept improving it as we went. And we anticipate doing that. September 16th, we'll be presenting to Greater Oshkosh Economic Development Corporation, their board of directors. We're also presenting on the Save Our Students group. They wanted a presentation as well on some information. We're doing that with them. September 21st, Downtown Rotary. September 29th, we are doing our first in-person presentation. That'll be at the Carl Traeger Cafetorium starting at 6 p.m. Dr. Cartwright and I will be presenting, and probably Drew will be with us as well. Go ahead.
Is that for the public?
Yep, that'll be
Okay.
in public, so, you know, and we took advantage
So
of our
anybody-
biggest spaces so we could
Okay.
spread out. Unfortunately, Kimball Auditorium is still being worked on, so we weren't able to use that space, but the cafetorium at Traeger will do really well. And then 2 days later, at October 1st, we're gonna be doing the same thing again at the Webster Auditorium. And those will be the 2 in-person presentations that we're looking forward to. And then October 6th, we're doing a virtual version of that. If people don't feel comfortable coming out, that's fine. We'll have a virtual webinar that people can participate in. We're hoping to gather questions in advance so we can have a pretty robust frequently asked questions section. And that's what we have scheduled so far. So we anticipate more presentations coming up. As you can see, from September 1st on, things are going to exponentially ramp up as we head towards the November election. So that's what we have to share today.
Is there going to be an artist rendering of what this might look like at some point?
Well,
How are the plans coming along?
What they typically do is they create the footprint and the general floor plan. We've talked a lot about that concept of, do you create an artist rendering of what the exterior might look like? But really, they don't do those final designs until such time as the referendum is approved and with the input of the community. You know, there's a lot of people who will get the opportunity. Not only will our teachers and community members get to provide input, but the general community at large will also be able to provide input on what that building is going to look like. You know, so I don't believe there's going to be an exterior rendering for the building. It'll just mainly be a floor plan. Plus, we're also keenly sensitive to the fact of how much architectural money we put into designing something prior to getting approval. So we have some of those pictures of what other facilities look like, but we really don't have a 3D look at the building quite yet. So.
Mrs. Carlin?
Kelly
I'm
was
sorry,
first.
Mrs.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask if we heard of an event or something going on that where it might be valuable for you to speak, do we let you know or Sherry know? Or?
Any and all. You can let
Okay.
Sherry know, you can let Dr. Cartwright know, you can let me know, and we are always willing to present at those.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because I think all of us belong to a certain number of clubs and organizations that
Yep.
could benefit from a presentation, including All City PTO that's coming up.
Absolutely.
I didn't hear that on your list, but I'm sure it
Yep.
is.
Yep, that's a great place.
Mrs. Olmsted?
When the presentation, and I know, I'm sure you guys have got it started, well, you've already got it, you already did it to the League of Women Voters. What is the, question is that presentation, how does it look as far as what we're doing for capital versus operational? Because we're going for both.
Mhm.
So are we looking at, when we give that presentation, are you guys looking, are we hitting both and why we're doing both?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
so
Yep,
it's
we
separate.
actually,
Okay.
the presentation is split into both sections.
Got it,
We
okay.
give the history and the background of each one. We
Okay.
talk a lot about the tax impact of each one.
Okay.
It's probably heavier on the capital because
Right.
the operational is less complex.
Right.
And the capital
Okay.
has more moving parts to it, so to speak.
Awesome, thank you.
And we also make sure that we include in the presentation the deliberation that the board took in making the decision as to why now.
Right. Oh, good, okay.
Right.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Gunlock.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Gunlock.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. Herzog, if I could ask Mr. Cameron to come on up for the COVID update.
Thank you. Kevin?
Hello, everybody.
Hello?
So as you know, each week, or each board meeting, we report on the weekly Winnebago County data summary. So every week, the county puts out the summary on a Thursday, and they break it down by school district geographical boundaries. So it's very helpful for us. And it looks at the previous 2-week period. So the most recent report that we can reference came out this past Thursday, and it covers the dates. Let's see where I have that. Bear with me a second here. Through September 1st. So, but if you remember last time, we talked about what that report had to say from a data standpoint, the school district was in the moderately high category based on the burden for our geographical area. So the burden is based on the case rate, which is the number of positive cases per 100,000 people in our area, and that was 99.5 last time. That has increased slightly for this most recent report. The case rate was at about 102, which moves us into the high category in terms of the burden. So thinking about that in reference to the rest of the county, the case rate for Winnebago County this most recent time around was 139. So it's a little bit below what our county is seeing. The state case rate is at about 170, so we're a bit below that as well. But both of those are also considered to be a high burden. So if you recall, the report also breaks down by age group and where the burden is for each age group. And that tends to fluctuate a bit more from week to week. So last time around, for instance, our elementary students were considered to be at about a moderate category. This time around, they were in the low category. Last time around, our middle school students were in the low category, and this time around, they were in the high category. And similarly, last time around, our high school students were considered high, and this time they were considered low. So that does bounce around a bit more.
Mr. Peschel.
Just a question, and more it's maybe about how we package just what you just said. So the 10 to 14 range is really not a middle school range. It's a range that affects elementary schools all the way up to high school.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so I guess I have concerns with how we package that information and how we promote that and how we accept that information as well. So I'm wondering, is there a different way that we can talk about that information so that it's accurately reflected as to how our age groups are really stationed throughout our schools?
So we did make a formal request in order to see if there was a way in which to make adjustments as to how the information is provided to us. What happens oftentimes is remembering that within Winnebago County there are several school districts, and how school levels are comprised within those school districts are going to be different.
Sure.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to say where are the core groups of where that age range goes. So for the elementary, we say elementary because that core range is primarily at the elementary range area. Just like the group, from 10 to 14, the core group would be middle school because it hits all, even though 10 would be typically like a fifth grader, right? But 11, 12, 13, that's your core group and going into the middle school and then going up to the high school. They did adjust the high school to get the 19-year-olds out of there for us, or the 18 and 19-year-olds to take those out. So that way it helps us navigate that just a little bit better. I wish it could be pure, but again, we're not the only school district in the county. And I also know that it takes them, it takes an extraordinary amount of time to reprogram in order and to recalculate based off of that. And with my data background and data analysis and that kind of stuff, I would know that firsthand. That even though it sounds like a minor tweak, it would take a long time for someone to actually be able to make that tweak to it. So that's the logic behind it, behind how we're packaging it. Because otherwise, then I have to this big long explanation I just gave, and I have to giving on every single time we have that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Kemmer.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
your report.
Was he finished?
I'm sorry, was he finished? Did I cut him off?
Were you finished or no?
Oh, yeah, next report comes out tomorrow, so.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I thought you were finished. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I thought he wasn't.
Okay, I know that Mrs. Szilagyi has a committee report. Is there anyone else who has a committee report tonight? Okay, Mrs. Garner, you'll be second. Thank you.
All right, so I will try to be brief because this was an education committee meeting on Thursday, August 13th, which was right after our regularly scheduled school board meeting and before one of our special ones where we went over all this information. But I will highlight, just for transparency, what we did discuss. On the agenda was teaching and learning for the fall, so we went over the 4 modules and what they would look like in the E-Academy again in greater detail. We did talk about the amount of notice that families would be given when switching between models and talked about how the district would need to fluctuate quickly if something happens at an individual school. We talked about how the E-Academy is aligned to the Common Core standards and was designed from the beginning to be delivered virtually. We asked about Bridges Math, but it has been they have reused their curriculum this year and are working to make it more virtual learning and also to adjust for what may have been lost in the spring. So that was exciting to hear. We talked about the district's plans to begin working with the YMCA and the Boys and Girls the Boys and Girls Club, for the AB schedules. There was discussion as to how virtual learning differs from what happened in the spring. And further discussion on E-Academy was that the learning would be the parent engagement component, especially for younger children, that the more parent interaction, the better success of the students' learning. And then finally, so you can see we kind of just covered a whole buffet of topics with our questions and concerns. But the final one was to look at the criteria that would be used as we switch between models. And as we know, when we met on Monday, August 17th, we adopted that. Our next meeting is tomorrow morning at 8:30. It will be here in the boardroom, and we will be going over the update for how school started this fall and also an Arts Corps update for some grants, the Stat Summit grant. That's our meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Salaji. Mrs. Garner.
Okay, this is Facilities and Finance. We met on August 20th. First order of business was the 3% credit card fee we charge to everybody. Mr. Nehans has reviewed that, and he is recommending that we keep it. There are other ways that we can accept payment, and so people aren't locked into this. If they don't want to pay the fee, they don't have to, but it's worth a substantial amount of money to the district, so we're going to keep it for now. We talked about the budget variance Fund 46. He's talked about it tonight, that he moved $2.5 million over to Fund 46 so that we could capture over $300,000. So he let us know that, and that will then be coming to the board. And next year he has committed to doing that in July so that it's not after the fact. We then talked about the direct deposit payroll. There are still about 50 people who are processing paper checks from the district. And that's, it's just a tough way to run payroll when everybody else is direct deposit. And the other thing that's happening is that some of the individuals don't cash their checks. And so our staff has to go and find them or then, have it, it has to be turned over to the state as unclaimed property. So just get done with that. So we agreed to go to direct deposit for everybody. And then we talked about the rec department building. They have no air circulation, which is now an issue with COVID. And so there's different solutions. We can rent space at $15,000 a year. We can purchase a new air handler at approximately $34,000. And then to install them is another $300,000. So Jim Fox explained that the recreation building lot is still making this more unique on the installation due to the limited room, and we have to get a variance from the city to do this work. The question was brought up if we should invest in this building. As we're looking at our facilities, we had a pretty robust discussion about that. The idea, we came up with several ideas. At the end, we decided the pros and cons of investing the $300,000 or not into the facility. The committee decided to move forward with updating the air handler. So we are going to move forward with that.
And Ms. Gardner,
Yeah,
also
go
just a reminder on that, if I may.
Yeah.
Because it is a different it is a different funding source.
Yes.
In order to do that, it's not coming out of our general
Right.
fund.
Yep.
Which, as we all know, and as you see, we run a very tight budget.
Yeah, this is Fund 80,
Yes,
right? This
that's
comes out of
correct.
Fund 80, yeah, so.
Can I ask a
Sure.
question? So the discussion was to continue forward utilizing the building and updating the air handler at the cost of
300,000.
$300,000. Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. Then we talked about administrative compensation. They will receive a total increases of $41,000. General executive and executive assistants will receive $19,800. The total cost to the district will be $60,800. Cartwright respectfully requested that the committee allow the administration team to roll over 10 days of vacation due to the workload that they experienced this
And just
summer.
clarification on that,
Yes.
we already typically allow them to roll over 5 days.
Yeah.
So it was just an extension.
Adding, okay, thank you. And then, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay, Nihans had recommended that for our dental insurance, that we consider going to self-funding. And it was really interesting the way that he described that. Due to the limitations of time, we cannot move health insurance this year. And we've been giving our dental insurance company about $300,000 to $400,000 that they then profit off of. And so he's saying, what if we were to keep that in-house? So after we are comfortable with self-funded dental, we'll move that, and then we'll talk about the bigger picture, which is to self-fund all of our health care. Let's see. Future agenda items are the replacement. We've got those tennis courts we still have to deal with at West. The timeline for the athletics facilities for maintenance and cost. There's a schedule I think Jadarski and Leader came up with. We're going to go over that. And then we're going to discuss the usage of Fund 46 because now we finally get to spend the money that we have been putting in there. I think it was like 5 years or whatever. So now we're ready to start making a plan. Let's see, next meeting is September 17th at this building at 8:30 a.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Gardner. All right, I think that was the end of the committee reports, so let's move on to, we had non-agenda related public forum. My understanding is no one signed up for that, and no one signed up for the agenda-related public forum. So
Correct.
moving right along. We have one workshop item, and Mr. Fox has been waiting patiently, so we'll invite Jim Fox up to give us the summer maintenance projects and CIP update. Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Thank you. Good evening. Well, tonight is our annual opportunity for us to share with you a less data-driven report. It's really more pictures and intended to be a dialogue, if you will, but be able to walk you through the particular projects that we have been able to achieve over the course of this summer. This summer was a little bit different than the last 5 years, so this being my 6th summer. This is our first summer where we've not utilized Act 32 dollars. And if you recall, over the last 5 summers, we've been spending on average about $5 million per summer, roughly, what was our construction season. So this summer is likely a bit more indicative of what would be a typical summer, with the noted exception that we do have a joint, we being the facilities department, has a joint venture with Rec Department and Fund 80 expenditures relating to the Alberta Kimball Auditorium. And this is our year 2 of our 3-year investment, and we'll walk you through that as well. So again, a lot of these are very generalized photographs because a lot of photographs of many different roofs or doors would probably bore you. It excites me, but it might bore you. But it's meant to be a dialogue, so if you have any questions or you're wondering what we're doing or what our thought process, please jump in at any time. Tonight, our intent is to discuss the high school roof replacements. We had done 2 at West, 1 at Franklin. Door replacements, we'll walk through Carl Traeger and Lakeside parking lots. We'll talk about boiler replacements and some general mechanical replacements that we performed. We again will discuss the Alberta Kimball Auditorium, which is in our year 2 of 3 project phase. North High School Innovation Lab we'll lightly touch on. because that's really not being driven by facilities at this point, but we'll give you a couple photos and let you know where we're at. And then just touch on some general miscellaneous areas throughout the district that we are putting our hands on. So roofing projects, this is typical every year. This particular year, we did see some roofing failures early. So three very large roof sections received our attention, 2 at West. They were what we consider C-wing and W-wing. If you're familiar with West High School, C-wing is basically where your culinary area is and right off of the administrative wing by the library. And W-wing is the old staff entrance number 1 on the far southwest corner of the building. All of those roof sections were removed, as you can see, with new 4-ply built-up roofing, which is our standard now. Franklin Elementary has 2 very large roof sections and a couple of smaller ones. This is the main section. If you walk into the building and continue straight down the hallway, it's the whole section from north to south. Same scope, basically, peeled off the roof, 4 new roof sections, and it's a 30-year roof. We have been working very hard over the last 6 years with both interior and exterior doors. These are just some examples of what we've been doing. Tech ed spaces, mechanical rooms on your left. You'll see we're doing more of a steel type of an application. They're typically fire rated, so they require that. The classrooms, many of our areas, this particular example on your right is at West High School. That is, I believe, the Ag Lab classroom. So many of the classrooms will either have a single door, double door, removable mullions, but we try to keep them as aesthetic as possible with an oak look to them. You're going to see some additional photos with the exterior doors. This is representative of our exterior door process. We spend, approximately $60,000 to $80,000 per year on exterior doors. We try to select the worst of the doors. Unfortunately, we're not able to replace all of them with budget constraints, but these are the type of doors that we have been installing in the last 6 years around the district. This is an example of South Park Middle School, doors 4 and door 13. Parking lots. We cannot do complete rebuilds on parking lots. Well, we could, but there are a lot of hurdles that we would need to jump through, and it would be very, very costly. So our approach in the past has been working with the city is that we can do an overlay, a mill and overlay, and what that means is we do a small grind, maybe just a 1/4 of an inch, maybe a 1/2 inch or better, and then we'll overlay with new asphalt. By doing that, we don't have to start to dig very large ponds to try to collect water, which is today's construction standard. I mean, ultimately, the school system will end up in that place. You can only overlay so many times before the parking lot base is completely gone. And we're just really buying time ultimately to get through a capital project where we can really start to put in the type of water runoff, stormwater runoff methodology like we did at Oak Lawn, where we store water underneath the parking lots, or at Carl Traeger, where we have ponds. That's the kind of technology we'd have to deploy, but many of our very small schools just can't absorb that type of technology on their very small sites. So this is what we've done. We milled. On the left, you can see the original photograph, and on the right is, of course, the new asphalt. Lakeside Elementary School, when the building addition occurred in 2015, we did not do anything with the original east parking lot. So you can see the asphalt on the left-hand side. The remaining asphalt was from 2015. We removed that. We moved handicap over on the bottom picture. You'll notice that we lowered the concrete walkway, and then we moved the handicap parking stalls from the front of the school. We moved them to the side to make way for the bus parking. We changed the interaction between the buses and cars last year, left the buses on the east parking lot and the parents in the northern parking lot, which was much safer, so we moved the parking stalls this year, handicap stalls. Mechanical projects, Jefferson, it seems like such a young building, but we are replacing boilers already. We had one failure and we had a couple more on their way. So we replaced all 4 boilers with 4 similar boilers. These are thermal solutions. That's what you're seeing in the picture. That is the manufacturer boiler that we had used throughout the Act 32 project. So that does a number of different things. It creates a lot of redundancy and consistency with a manufacturer for parts replacement and warranty. There is only one building that remains that has not had their boiler plant upgraded, well, with the exception of the rec building, that is Carl Traeger. Still is firing their existing 1998 boilers. Oakwood Elementary School. They had unfortunately, I got there just a little too late and wasn't prepared. So the left-hand picture is the air handler half taken apart. Our HVAC technician had done a wonderful job over the last couple of years trying to rebuild this air handler and just keep it running. This particular school, Oakwood, has one larger air handler that serves the gymnasium and some common areas and a lot of the open concept, and it was just falling apart. So we were able to split that air handler. On the right, you can see that really from about 3/4 of the way back forward, it's a brand new air handler. It's called a fan wall, and that is utilized to distribute air to the open concept area, the gymnasium, and some of the common corridors in that area. Alberta Kimball, electrical renovation. Pretty exciting project, really. It's been a 3-year process. We spent all of last summer in the Alberta Kimball updating audio. This particular summer was utilizing some of the infrastructure that we had already, wiring specifically, we had already pulled last year. So on your far right is a picture of the old mechanical dimmer switch. Electrically, it was a significant hazard. You can see the open panels and it just looks bad. The center is a picture of the general stage area. On top of, above that is a picture of the stage from about halfway back. On your left, far left, you'll see is the elevated portion, which is on your stage, which is actually the far right picture would actually sit on top of that mezzanine. That's where that dimmer sits prior to this. You really can't see it from the audience very well, but that's where all that technology sat. All of the ropes that fly everything above people on the stage would then line up above that wall. Those have already been removed. And so really this year, our focus was to replace all of the rigging, which is all of your lines that fly everything. And that's what you don't see in this photograph right now, because that has been the delay as a result of COVID and manufacturing. But now our parts, luckily, are showing up Monday. So we're going to be able to complete the rigging next week. But what we were able to do was move through all of the electrical on time. While we were processing through the electrical, we had an opportunity in-house to paint the entire stage walls. So now, as you'll see in that center picture, instead of that beautiful mint green, we have a black backstage area, which looks much more appropriate for that particular venue. On your left, you can see the electricians working away. But I want to point out on the lower right, now on this previous picture, if you look at the far right, that was the dimmer rack that was up on top of the mezzanine that controlled all of your theatrical lighting. On your lower right, that's what it looks like today. It's modern technology. Electrically, it's safe, and it's really going to provide that venue with a lot more opportunities. On the top right, we created a smaller space on stage. Actually, the space existed, it just didn't have any tech. So there's a small TV, there's amplifiers, all the the various intercom that stage manager would use to conduct and control performances will all be located in that small area. We do have 1 year left, and you'll hear from me next year, and that's going to be year 3 in the Kimball Auditorium. We are going to be mounting a brand new projection screen in front of the Grand, a new projector, both appropriately sized for that venue, and then we're going to deploy a simple system in that area, which will allow myself, Dr. Cartwright, any teacher or principal to walk into that venue with their tech and just be able to do some professional development or a presentation or anything else without having to have somebody back there controlling all kinds of different lights and tools and everything else. And that was the other thing that we added. Not to take away from this, but in the center picture, we converted the entire auditorium from 300-watt incandescent lights to 30-watt LEDs. So we were saving significant amount of electrical consumption. Gosh, there was something else. Oh yes, the Kimball Auditorium, oddly enough, did not have a light switch in that house. So the old way of building auditoriums was to have a ghost lamp that they left on all the time, and it was a little light bulb that was just to the left of the stage as you looked at it, and you kind of had to navigate these aisleways in the dark lights. So we now have the aisle lights are operational off of a switch. You will notice next time you're in there, they stay on all the time now for safety. And now we have light switches that are all integrated with our overall lighting system for the house. So now we can safely turn the lights on for the house. It's also programmable for different scenes, which is really pretty cool. Innovation Lab, I told you that we, specifically our facilities department was not involved in this. This is being driven by a different group, but here's a picture of the walls being built in a particular area by Myron Construction at North High School. And on your far right, you'll see the initial paint job. They still have some graphics that need to go over a lot of this paint. Very interesting graphics. Been a long conversation. The group was really an energetic group, really driven. A lot of great discussion. Disher is making the millwork for that particular space. That the millwork, which is all your cabinetry, should be arriving in probably late October, mid to late October. And I saw this week they already have a 3D printer sitting in that space, and there was some additional equipment coming for the woods and metal shop as well. So it's an ongoing project, but once it's complete, I think they're going to be up and running, and probably with all their tech and with all their equipment, probably sometime in November. Just some general flooring. This was really a great year with regard to flooring, in that we had more time. It's not great because COVID, of course, was present, but because of students and because of staff not being present within facilities, we had opportunities to get to spaces that we normally would not. And so we took advantage of those opportunities on a couple different places with carpeting and libraries. The top is Carl Traeger, the bottom right is Shapiro. We also tiled a great many vinyl floors throughout the school system that our custodial team really had very little opportunities on a typical year to empty those rooms and be able to provide flooring for those spaces. But given the additional time that they had this year, they were able to take advantage of that, and they did a great job. So just to wrap up through some miscellaneous projects, again, the projects I wanted to show and explain to you were, of course, the larger, more visible projects, and certainly the more budget costly. But our maintenance shop, we did a drainage plan through one bay. We did upgrade the electrical service in our maintenance shop from 240 volts to 3-phase, and we were able to work with We Energies, and they actually paid for the service in the transformer. We just switched everything over internal to the building, so that was a great relationship. We built numerous walls, which is pretty typical in the summertime at North High School for biology, Shapiro, Carl Traeger Elementary School, to try to split larger spaces to accommodate more education. Elementary school at Oakwood, some radiant heat and a couple different other devices related to HVAC throughout the school system. We had talked about some interior, exterior doors. There are quite a few more. Flooring replacements we discussed briefly. I also want to point out from our custodial team with regard to flooring, and I know I had said this before, but I don't want it to get lost, that this particular summer, I mean, they really worked hard. And they were able to empty offices, they were able to empty small pull-out rooms, and we were able to not only replace floors, we were able to strip and wax floors, we were able to paint spaces, and just do some fantastic things in classrooms and small offices and small educational areas that we typically would not. So from a project standpoint, while it doesn't show on this particular presentation as being a high dollar process or project, it certainly was present, and I think it makes a difference within our facilities. Ongoing lock replacements is an annual occurrence. Jefferson, along with the boiler system, we converted that building, the BAS, which is your building automation system, and those are the electronics that control all of the ventilation within that facility. We are slowly migrating through Oshkosh area schools and converting everything over to a newer system called a tritium system. So that is really what our summer looked like. Do you have any questions?
I had one. It actually relates to Alberta Kimball,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I want to say, is absolutely wonderful what we've done with that. I mean, as a product and as a person that used to use that stage throughout my high school years and have come to see many people perform on that stage in the last 20 years, this update was greatly needed. So I was almost hoping that you were going to use stage speak when you gave your little presentation about this. And you were going to talk about stage right, stage left, this is over here, center stage, backstage, but you didn't. You did a little bit, but not fully.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for it, but it wasn't there. So my question to you, that on the last slide for Kimball,
Mm-hmm.
the upper right-hand corner slide that
Yes.
shows the staging table, the stage manager's table,
Correct.
is that replacing the booth?
No.
So the booth is still there?
Correct. And the booth received a renovation last year.
Okay.
We purchased a new soundboard this year. We purchased a new lighting console this year. We updated the wireless rack within that room this year.
Okay.
So really, if you get an opportunity, just stop at the Kimball and take a look at that area. It's really come a long way. And they had issues with wireless, being able to sync up. They're operating 24 wireless, which is a lot.
Sure.
And when you start talking about wireless technology and TV stations and radio stations and interference that we can get, it's difficult to operate that much wireless. So we were able to update that technology with digital technology and get it tuned properly. So now all of those systems are up and running as well.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Questions or comments? I want to thank you again, as I did Mr. Neon's, for the comprehensive report that you gave. And I love having all these pictures.
Mhm.
And even though I do not have the skill set or knowledge base to have participated in any of this, I admire those who do have that knowledge base and skill set, which you obviously do. But I also think it's really important that we have reports like this, because as board members, we sometimes get asked questions about how we are maintaining our facilities. And I think you've done a wonderful job tonight of explaining how we have done that over this last year. So I commend you for that. I believe that you help the board make sure that we're being good stewards of the district's funds and maintaining our facilities as best we can in the limitations of our budget. So I thank you for that.
And a lot of these are behind the scenes and things that we can't
Yes.
see. They're below and they're above and you can't see them. So it's important. I love the pictures.
Other questions or comments? Guess not. Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to the consent resolution agenda. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. Are there any items that any of you would like to pull from the consent resolution? I would like to pull 1B and also 3. All right, be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District will consider approval of 1, personnel, A, appointments, temporary appointments, resignations, and salaries. 2, 2020-2021 budget. 4, resolution authorizing temporary borrowing in an amount not to exceed $9,900,000. Issuance of tax and revenue anticipation promissory notes and participation in the PMA levy and aid anticipation notes program. And 5, designation of administrators as essential employees, exempting them from Families First Coronavirus Response Act.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Evans?
Aye.
Garner?
Aye.
Herzl?
Aye.
Olmsted?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Solagi?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. Then moving on to individually considered resolutions, Resolution 1B, be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the retirements as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
We have two individuals who have already begun the stage of life known as retirement. Carrie Edwards, who has been an SLD teacher at at Oshkosh West High School and had served the district and its students faithfully for 12 years. We also have Jill Radke, an ID teacher assistant from Webster Stanley Middle School, who has been with the district since 2012. And I think it's important to take this opportunity to thank them for the service they have provided over the years to the students and families of our district, and to wish them well in their retirement. Any other comments? Please call the roll.
Garner?
Aye.
Herzl?
Aye.
Olmsted?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Solagi?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Evans?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Resolution number 3, be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the waiving of all student parking fees for the 2020-21 school year as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
I had asked that this be pulled because I think it's important to highlight and to expand on Dr. Cartwright's good news item relative to the sensitivity of the board to what many of our families are experiencing during this time, and that we take the opportunity for this current school year to waive the parking lot fees for our high school students. This is a one-year exemption, as it were, and those who have already paid that fee will be receiving that money back. So I think this is a good step for our district. Any other comments, questions? Please call the roll.
Actually,
I'm sorry.
I have a comment. It actually relates to last year. So do we have an accounting of how many fees were taken in last year?
We do not have that information prepared for you at this
That's
point in
fine.
time.
I didn't expect you to have that. I'm just wondering if we're looking at that information as well and possibly returning that because students didn't use, the parking lots for a half a year. And it looks like we're gonna have a surplus as well.
If I may,
Sure.
actually, they did not use our parking lots for 3 months.
Yeah, not
Well,
a year.
I apologize, I'm
So
not
if
trying
We
to
were out
correct
in the
you.
middle of March.
My apologies, I'm not trying to correct you.
Thank you for the correction. Duly noted, but a third of the year, those fees weren't, those passes weren't used. So if we have the ability, it would be good to look into seeing if we can return something along a third of that fee from last year back as well. So just my opinion.
All we're doing tonight is voting on the fees for this year. That's all the resolution
Correct.
addresses.
I'm giving
I understand.
some suggestion to looking back at last year a little bit. So,
Right.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, I would need to know if that's the direction the board would want to go in.
I don't think we can talk about it.
No, that would
We're
probably
not
come,
noticed for that.
that needs to come to Facility and Finance then.
Right.
First. So let's bring that to the Facility and Finance Committee maybe.
Sure.
Okay.
That would be appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Peschel.
Sure.
I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
understanding.
Any other comments, questions? Please call the roll.
Herzl?
Yes, aye.
Olmsted?
Aye.
Peschel?
Aye.
Solagi?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Evans?
Aye.
Garner?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Do we have any requests for future agenda items? Mr. Peschel.
One, it's not necessarily a request, it's mainly looking for Dr. Cartwright's vision as to when we might be provided an additional update on the E-Academy, the progress that you were talking about earlier.
We can definitely provide that up, and we can also, if you would like, put it into like the Education Committee, if you would like,
Sure.
whatever the desire is of the board.
Like she said, you did say that you were gonna
Survey the
after four,
parents.
yeah, survey the parents like at that 4-week mark? What do you think about
Okay.
something
Well,
like that after they bring out?
It will probably be after, around.
Right, yeah, so after you get all four,
Yeah, and let it roll just a little bit,
Yeah.
and then, yes.
okay,
At that point in time, we could definitely bring it back.
unless you want it before,
Well, no, I guess, you know.
or at least education.
We as the board receive direct
Mhm.
information and requests from participants in that program.
Mhm.
So I think it's important that if, you know, maybe just a small progress report at our next meeting about how are things looking for that, you know? Because I just think that that request has been made of us and your administrative staff as well. But I think it's important that we be provided that information as routinely as we can.
Absolutely.
So-
That's
Can you
something
be
that-
real clear on like what you want them to report on? Like the metrics or what exactly you want to hear about?
I guess I'm wanting, the stuff that you talked about tonight is new, right? I want to hear about how that's being utilized and whether we're experiencing a more positive feedback from that, or is there still mixed feelings about it and such, or how is that rolling out? So that's generally what I'm looking for.
I can definitely give an update as to what implementations have gone into place, and to discuss, you know, maybe some of how that implementation went in. I do also want to comment to the board a gratitude, a thank you very much for those of you who forwarded the emails to me so that we could handle that, which is really important as well, so that we're able to be attuned to it. And again, very appreciative of our parents for working with us and understanding that and allowing us an opportunity to address some of their concerns.
Well, I think it would make sense, you could do that as part of your superintendent update.
Yeah, yeah.
And then once
Yeah.
the data are gathered from the parents and perhaps the students, we could look at a workshop on that. I think that would make sense.
It could be a workshop, and again, just need direction if you would prefer for us to bring that to the education committee, or if you want that for the full board.
I think it would go to education first.
I'm comfortable with that. I like
I
that.
think that makes sense.
Well, can I, now I gotta ask to clarify, because it sounds like we're actually talking about two different things. at
Yeah,
this
I
point.
agree with Bob.
I'm
Okay.
confused.
Yeah, I'm confused too. I agree with you, Bob.
My understanding, for clarification, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. My understanding for clarification is that a part of my good news report, I'll do a little update, you know, a
Right.
little blurb about, okay, this is what we've accomplished over the past couple weeks.
Okay.
And this is what we're looking to accomplish, you know, over the course of maybe the next 2 weeks, so that everyone has common understanding.
Right.
And then, once we get to the point where we do a survey, we'll create a workshop to bring to the education committee in order to provide an update, and then that can be shared, obviously, with the report out to the board.
So it's like,
Is that-
okay.
That's fine.
Is that?
I got it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
Looks like we have consensus on that. Good,
Okay.
good.
And I had one thing. Could we do the same thing for the diversity and inclusion committee work that we're doing?
Yes.
And add that to like an update as well to let us know what's happening with that?
Absolutely, and we can definitely provide that information.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other future agenda items? All right, seeing none, are there any announcements tonight? Seeing none, would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Olmsted?
Aye.
Peschel?
Hi.
Solari?
Aye.
Arlen?
Aye.
Evans?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.